Marcus Chen wiped the sweat from his forehead as he climbed through the dense forest. The emergency beacon had been pulsing for 3 hours now, and he knew someone needed help badly. As a field engineer stationed at the remote research outpost, he was the closest human for 200 miles. The beacon signal came from something that had crashed hard into the mountainside. Above his station, the trees cleared suddenly, and Marcus stopped in his tracks. A spacecraft lay embedded in the rocky slope. It was unlike anything he had seen before. The hull was smooth and curved with patterns that seemed to shimmer even though the metal was clearly damaged. Smoke rose from several breach points and the whole structure tilted at a dangerous angle. Marcus activated his communication device. No signal. The mountains blocked everything out here. He was on his own for this rescue, grabbed his emergency kit, and approached the vessel carefully. The design was definitely not human, and that meant first contact protocols should apply. But those protocols also said save lives first and ask questions later. He found what looked like an airlock, but it was sealed tight. The control panel next to it displayed symbols he could not read. Marcus pulled out his plasma cutter and began working on the doorframe. It took 20 minutes, but finally the door groaned and shifted. He pried it open with a crowbar and stepped inside. The interior was dark except for emergency lighting that cast everything in a dim blue glow. Marcus moved forward carefully, calling out. His voice echoed through the ship. He passed through what looked like a cargo area and then into a corridor. At the end of the corridor, he found a larger chamber that seemed to be the control room. That was when he saw her. An alien woman lay collapsed near a console that sparked and flickered. She was breathing but unconscious. Marcus rushed forward to check if she was injured. Then he froze. She wore nothing. Her body was covered in delicate patterns that glowed faintly with bioluminescent light. The patterns flowed across her skin in swirling designs that pulsed gently. She had a humanoid form, but her features were more refined, and her skin held a slight lavender tint. Marcus quickly looked away, feeling extremely uncomfortable. He had no idea what was appropriate here. Was this normal for her species, or had something happened to her clothing in the crash? He forced himself to focus on the emergency. She was alive, and that was what mattered. He pulled a thermal blanket from his kit and carefully laid it over her without looking directly at her. The woman stirred, and her eyes opened. They were large and violet-colored with flecks of silver. For a moment, she seemed confused, staring up at the ceiling. Then her gaze found Marcus standing a few feet away, holding his hands up in what he hoped was a universal non-threatening gesture. Her reaction was immediate and intense. She gasped, scrambled backward, pressing herself against the console. Her eyes went wide with what looked like horror. She grabbed the thermal blanket and wrapped it tightly around herself. Her mouth moved, forming words in a language Marcus could not understand, but her tone was clear. She was shocked and upset. Marcus backed up several steps, kept his hands visible, and spoke slowly. "I am sorry. I am here to help. Your ship crashed." He pointed to his communication device, and then to the damaged ship around them, hoping she would understand he meant no harm. The woman stared at him, trembling. She looked down at herself, wrapped in the blanket, and then back at Marcus. Her expression shifted from shock to what seemed like shame. She spoke again, this time more quietly, but with urgency. She pointed at a damaged screen on the console near her. Marcus approached cautiously. The screen flickered, and he could see it was some kind of translation system. He tapped his communication device and held it near the screen. After a moment of processing, text began appearing in English on his device. The translation was broken, but readable. "See me before ceremony? Great shame. Not proper. First contact ruined." Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had made a terrible mistake without even knowing it. Among her people, being seen in their natural state before some kind of formal introduction was clearly a serious cultural violation. He had crashed into her ship, quite literally, and seen her in a state she considered private and sacred. He typed quickly into his device. "I am deeply sorry. I did not know. Your ship was damaged. I thought you needed medical help. I meant no disrespect." The woman read his message on her console. Her expression remained troubled, but some of the fear seemed to leave her eyes. She typed a response. "You are human, from this world. You did not know our ways, but still the shame exists. I am Lasara of the Valari people. I was on scout mission when my ship malfunctioned. Marcus introduced himself and explained he was an engineer. He offered to help repair her ship if possible. Lysara hesitated, then nodded slowly. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and gestured toward various damaged systems. Even through her obvious distress, she seemed to recognize that she needed assistance. For the next hour, Marcus worked on the ship's power systems while Usara directed him through the translation system. She remained wrapped in the blanket, keeping distance between them. The air between them was heavy with awkwardness. Marcus could see she kept looking away from him, as if even making eye contact added to her shame. He managed to restore partial power to the environmental systems. The ship began warming up and some of the main lights came online. Lasara accessed a storage compartment and pulled out what looked like ceremonial robes. She disappeared into another chamber and emerged a few minutes later, fully clothed. The robes were elegant and seemed to shimmer like her ship. She looked more composed now, but her discomfort remained obvious. "Thank you for helping," she said through the translator. Her voice was soft. "But you have seen what should not be seen. Among my people, this is not easily forgiven." Marcus sat down heavily on a cargo container. He had come here to rescue someone, and instead had committed some kind of serious cultural offense. He looked at Lasara and saw genuine distress in her expression. This was not going to be simple. "I truly did not mean to cause you shame," he said. "Where I come from, saving a life comes before protocol, but I understand I have wronged you. Tell me how I can make this right." Lysara studied him for a long moment. "I do not know if you can," she said quietly, "but we have bigger problems now, and my distress beacon has been broadcasting. Others may have heard it. Not all species are as well-meaning as you appear to be." Marcus stood up and checked his equipment, and we need to prepare. "Can you scan for incoming ships?" Lysara moved to her console and began working. After a moment, her face went pale. 3 ships approaching. They are Kresh vessels. Hunters and slavers. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. How long until they arrive? 1 hour, maybe less. He looked at Lysara, then at the damaged ship around them. An awkward first contact had just become something much more dangerous. Then we had better get ready. "I am not letting anyone take you." Right. This human who had accidentally shamed her was now preparing to defend her from serious threats. She did not understand his kind at all, but something in his determined expression told her he meant every word. Part 2. Breaking the ice, Marcus moved quickly through the crashed ship, taking inventory of everything that could be useful. Lysara watched him from the control console, still wrapped partially in her ceremonial robes. The translation system continued. Working between them, though, the conversation remained stiff and formal. "What are you doing?" she asked, as Marcus pulled apart a damaged panel. "Looking for anything we can use as weapons or defenses," Marcus replied without stopping his work. "The Kresh you mentioned. Are they dangerous?" Lysara nodded slowly. "Very dangerous. They hunt crashed vessels and claim survivors as salvage. Anyone they find becomes property to sell in their markets. They do not recognize rescue rights or personal freedom." Marcus paused and looked at her directly. "That is not happening to you." "Not while I am here." She met his gaze with confusion clear in her violet eyes. "You barely know me. I am not even of your species. And you have already violated our customs, even if by accident. Why would you risk yourself for me?" Marcus thought about how to explain. "Where I come from, we have a saying. Do the right thing, even when it is hard. You are a person who needs help. That is all that matters to me." Lysara was quiet for a moment. "Your species is strange. You have no idea," Marcus said, with a slight smile. He returned to pulling components from the damaged systems. Over the next 30 minutes, Marcus worked while Lysara provided information about her ship's systems. The awkwardness between them began to fade slightly as they focused on the practical problems. Lysara explained which systems were salvageable and which were completely destroyed. Marcus showed her human engineering techniques that could work with Velari technology. "Your people build things differently," Lysara observed. "More crude but effective." "We work with what we have," Marcus said. He was connecting power cells to create a makeshift defensive turret. "Humans are not the most advanced species in our area of space. We make up for it with creativity. You do not have faster-than-light travel, Lasara asked. Not yet. We are working on it. Should have it in another decade or so. Lasara looked shocked. You are still confined to your home system, and yet you respond to distress calls like this. Most species would not risk themselves for unknown aliens before achieving interstellar capability. Marcus shrugged. Like I said, we do what feels right. He finished connecting the turret and tested it. The weapon hummed to life and tracked across the room, following his targeting remote. Lasara watched with interest. That is clever work. Simple but functional. Basic human engineering, Marcus said. Now help me position it to cover the main entrance. They worked together to mount the turret. As they did, Lasara began asking questions about human culture. Marcus explained about Earth and the various nations and peoples. He told her about human history, both the good parts and the difficult ones. Lasara listened intently. Your species has fought many wars among yourselves, she said. Yes, too many. But we have also learned from those mistakes. Most of humanity is working together now. We still have disagreements, but we are trying to build something better. Lasara was silent as she considered this. The Valari had been peaceful for thousands of years. We achieved unity long ago, but we also became perhaps too cautious. We avoid conflicts rather than face them. There's nothing wrong with peace, Marcus said. But sometimes you have to stand up for what is right, even if it means conflict. A warning tone sounded from the console. Lasara rushed over and checked the display. The Kresh ships are closer. 20 minutes. Marcus surveyed their preparations. They had one working turret and several jury-rigged traps using components from the ship. It was not much, but it would have to do. He checked his personal weapons. A plasma cutter that could double as a short-range weapon, and a projectile pistol he carried for emergency wildlife encounters. Lasara, he said seriously, I need you to stay in the control room. Lock yourself in if possible. I will try to hold them off from the main entrance. She looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. You plan to face them alone? Better me than you. If they get past me, maybe you can seal the control room and wait for rescue. That is foolish, Lasara said firmly. You will die. Maybe, but at least you will have a chance. Lasara stood and walked closer to him. For the first time since he had accidentally seen her, she approached without visible hesitation. Marcus Chen, you have shamed me according to my culture. But you have also shown me something I did not expect. You possess a quality my people have lost in our long peace. You have courage that is not based on technology or superiority. It comes from something inside you. Marcus felt uncomfortable with the praise. I am just doing what anyone should do. Lasara said quietly. Most would not. Most species would have left me to my fate or demanded something in return for help. You ask for nothing and give everything. Before Marcus could respond, another alert sounded. 3 ships were descending toward their position. Marcus could hear the rumble of engines through the damaged hull. They're here, Lasara said. Marcus moved to the entrance and checked his weapons. Remember, stay in the control room. No matter what happens, I will help you fight, Lasara said. No, you are injured and you do not have weapons. Please, Lasara, stay safe. She wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped her. She nodded reluctantly and moved back toward the control room. At the doorway, she paused. Marcus, thank you for everything. He smiled at her. We are not done yet. Thank me when this is over. The Kresh ships landed outside. Marcus could hear heavy footsteps approaching the damaged airlock he had cut through earlier. He positioned himself behind cover near the entrance and waited. His heart pounded, but his hands were steady. The first Kresh warrior ducked through the opening. It was massive and covered in thick scales, with a face that looked like a cross between a lizard and a shark. It carried a large energy weapon and wore heavy armor. The creature spotted Marcus immediately and raised its weapon. Marcus did not give it time to fire. He triggered the first trap. A cargo container he had rigged dropped from above, crashing down on the Kresh warrior. The creature roared in pain and surprise. 2 more warriors rushed in. Marcus activated the turret. Energy bolts filled the corridor, forcing the Kresh to take cover. He used the moment to reposition, moving deeper into the ship toward his next defensive point. The Kresh returned fire, and the walls around him sparked and smoked. "Human," one of the Kresh called out in heavily accented English. "Surrender the Valari. We claim her as salvage." "You have no authority here," Marcus shouted back. "She's not salvage. She is a person. You are not taking her," the Kresh leader laughed. "Foolish human. You are alone, and we are many. You will die for nothing." Marcus triggered another trap. An energy cell overload sent a wave of electromagnetic interference through the ship. The Kresh weapons and armor flickered and failed temporarily. Marcus used those precious seconds to fire his plasma cutter, hitting one warrior in an unarmored joint. The creature went down screaming. From the control room, Lysara watched on the monitors. She saw Marcus fighting with everything he had against impossible odds. She saw him use his mind as much as his weapons, setting traps and predicting enemy movements. She realized this human was not just brave, he was smart and determined in ways that went beyond simple heroism. The Kresh regrouped and began advancing more carefully. Marcus fell back toward the control room, leading them through every trap and defensive position he had prepared. He was buying time, hoping that Lysara could send out a proper distress call that someone friendly might answer. But as the Kresh closed in, Marcus's new time was running out. He had perhaps one more stand left in him. He positioned himself at the final corridor before the control room and prepared for what might be his last fight. Inside the control room, Lysara made a decision. She could not let this human die for her while she hid. She began accessing her ship's remaining weapon systems, looking for anything that could help. If Marcus would fight for her, then she would fight for him. It was the least she could do for someone showing this much honor. Part 3. The hunters arrived. The Kresh warriors moved through the damaged ship with practiced efficiency. They had done this many times before. Find crashed vessels, take what they wanted, and leave. The presence of one determined human should have been nothing more than a minor annoyance. But Marcus was making them pay for every step forward. The Kresh leader, whose name was Grakish, studied the corridor ahead with growing irritation. 2 of his warriors were injured, and 1 was dead. All from simple traps and clever positioning. This human had no advanced weapons and no armor, yet he fought like someone who had been in combat before. Spread out, Grakish ordered his remaining 4 warriors. Flush him out. Use shock grenades if needed. The warriors moved forward, weapons ready. They entered the next section, carefully checking every corner. The corridor was empty. Then the floor beneath them gave way. Marcus had weakened the deck plating in that section. 2 warriors fell through into the cargo bay. Below, landing hard among the wreckage, Marcus appeared from a side passage and fired his plasma cutter at the closest warrior. The beam cut through the Kresh armor at a weak point between the shoulder plates. The warrior howled and dropped his weapon. Marcus was already moving, disappearing back into the shadows before return fire could hit him. Enough of this, Grakish roared. Burn everything. Force him out. The Kresh began firing their weapons at random into the ship. Energy bolts tore through walls and equipment. Small fires started in several places. Smoke began filling the corridors. Marcus felt the heat growing around him. He was being driven toward the control room, whether he wanted to go there or not. Inside the control room, Lysara worked frantically at her console. She had managed to restore power to one of the ship's defensive systems. It was a plasma cannon mounted on the exterior hull. Normally it was used against space debris, but it could work against the Kresh ships outside. She targeted the nearest vessel and fired. The plasma bolt struck the Kresh ship broadside. The vessel shields absorbed most of the impact, but the ship rocked violently. Alarms began sounding from the Kresh ships. The warriors inside Lysara's ship hesitated as they received urgent communications from their crews outside. Marcus used the distraction to reposition again. He was running low on options and ammunition. His plasma cutter was nearly drained, and he had only a few shots left in his pistol. He could hear the Kresh regrouping and planning their next move. The smoke was getting thicker, making it hard to breathe. Grakish realized what was happening. The Valari female is operating ship weapons. Take her alive. She has value. Kill the human. 3 Kresh warriors charged toward the control room. Marcus stepped into their path. He raised his pistol and fired his remaining shots. One warrior went down with a shot through the visor. The other two returned fire, and Marcus barely dodged behind a support beam. Energy bolts melted the metal inches from his head. Marcus dropped the empty pistol and grabbed a piece of debris. It was a metal strut about 3 feet long. Not much of a weapon, but all he had left. As the first Kresh warrior came around the corner, Marcus swung with all his strength. The strut connected with the warrior face, breaking scales and teeth. The warrior staggered backward. The second warrior grabbed Marcus and lifted him off the ground. The Kresh was incredibly strong. Marcus felt ribs creak under the pressure. He could not break free. The warrior drew back a clawed hand to deliver a killing blow. Then the control room door opened, and Lysara emerged. She held a Volari energy weapon that she had retrieved from the ship's emergency locker. The weapon hummed and fired. A beam of concentrated energy struck the warrior holding Marcus. The Kresh released him and fell to the deck, twitching. Marcus dropped to the ground, gasping for air. Lysara moved to his side, her weapon trained on the remaining Kresh in the corridor. "I could not let you fight alone," she said. Marcus nodded, unable to speak yet. Together they backed into the control room. Lysara sealed the door behind them. The room had reinforced walls that could hold for a while, but not forever. The Kresh outside began pounding on the door, trying to force it open. "Can you still fire the plasma cannon?" Marcus asked, between painful breaths. Lysara moved to the console. "Yes. 2 more shots before power fails completely. Target the other Kresh ships. Make them think twice about continuing this." Lysara fired again. This time she hit the second Kresh vessel directly in the engine section. The ship began losing altitude and had to make an emergency landing further down the mountain. The Kresh warriors inside Lysara's ship received panicked communications from their ships. Grakish made a calculation. This salvage was costing too much. 2 warriors dead, 3 injured, and now 2 of his ships damaged. The human was far more trouble than expected, and the Volari female was armed and dangerous. But Grakish did not become a successful hunter by being stubborn. There would be other opportunities. "Fall back," he ordered his remaining warriors. "We leave now." The pounding on the control room door stopped. Marcus and Lysara listened as the Kresh footsteps moved away toward the exit. After several minutes, they heard the Kresh ships powering up and lifting off. The sound of engines faded into the distance. Lysara checked her sensors. They are leaving. All 3 ships are departing. Marcus collapsed against the wall, holding his injured ribs. "We did it. We actually did it." Lysara knelt beside him, examining his injuries. "You are hurt. Let me help." She retrieved a medical kit from the ship's supplies. As she worked on treating his injuries, Marcus studied her. The fear and shame from their first encounter was gone. In its place was something like respect. "You've saved my life," Marcus said. "Thank you. You saved mine first," Lysara replied as she applied a healing gel to his bruised ribs. "Multiple times, I could not hide while you died for me. I thought you wanted to stay out of the fight. I did. But then I saw how you fought. Not with superior weapons or numbers. You fought with your mind and your determination. You made impossible things possible. I realized I could not let someone with that much honor die alone."
Ow.
Marcus winced as the healing gel began working. It stung, but he could feel the pain reducing. "Your people sound very formal. All this talk about honor and shame. Is it always so complicated?" Lysara almost smiled. "Yes. The Volari have many customs and traditions. We have built our entire culture around ceremony and proper behavior. It has brought us peace, but it has also made us rigid. Perhaps too rigid." "What do you mean?" She sat back, considering her words. "When you first entered my ship and saw me, I felt such shame. By my culture, you had committed a great offense. But now I realize you were simply trying to save a life. Your intention was pure, even if your action violated my customs. Perhaps intentions should matter more than rules." Marcus nodded slowly. "Both matter, I think. Rules give us structure, but intentions show us who we really are."
Ow.
They sat in silence for a moment. The ship creaked and settled around them. Small fires still burned in some sections, and smoke drifted through the corridors. But they were alive, and the immediate danger had passed. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Lie." Sarah checked her console. "I have sent a proper distress signal using Valari encryption. My people will receive it and send rescue. They should arrive within a day, and then what? Will you get in trouble for what happened? The whole first contact situation, I mean." Lysera looked uncertain. "I do not know. By our law, I should report exactly what occurred. You saw me before proper ceremony? That is a violation. But you also saved my life and fought beside me. That must count for something." Marcus struggled to his feet. His ribs hurt, but the healing gel was helping. "Whatever happens, I will tell them the truth. I made a mistake out of ignorance, but I never meant to harm you." "I know that now," Lysara said. "I will tell them the same. Perhaps my people will understand. Perhaps they will not. Either way, I will speak on your behalf." She stood as well and faced him directly. "Marcus Chen, you are a strange and remarkable human. I am glad you heard my distress beacon. I am glad you came, even though it led to this complicated situation. Your species may not have our technology or our long history, but you have something equally valuable. You have the courage to do what is right even when it costs you everything."
Us?
Marcus felt embarrassed by the praise. "I just did what needed doing," exactly, Lysara said. "That is what makes it remarkable." They spent the next few hours working together to put out the remaining fires and secure the ship. The Kresh might return, or other dangers could appear. As they worked, the awkwardness between them continued to fade. They talked about their worlds and their people. They shared stories and learned about each other. By the time exhaustion finally forced them to rest, Marcus realized something important had happened. They had moved beyond their disastrous first meeting. They had fought together and survived together. Whatever cultural violations had occurred, they had been balanced by mutual respect and shared danger. Lysara settled into the pilot chair, while Marcus took watch near the entrance. He kept his makeshift weapons close just in case, but for now, they were safe. Two very different people from very different worlds who had found common ground in the most unlikely circumstances. Outside, the sun was beginning to set over the mountains. The forest grew dark and quiet. Inside the damaged ship, two beings rested and waited for rescue, knowing that they had both learned something valuable about each.
Other species.
And perhaps about themselves as well. Part 4. The human stands his ground on, broke over the mountains, casting long shadows across the crashed ship. Marcus had stayed awake most of the night, keeping watch. His ribs still ached despite the Valari healing gel, but he could move without too much pain. Lysara had slept in the pilot chair, finally giving in to exhaustion. After running on adrenaline for so long, as the first light touched, the ship's sensors began beeping urgently. Marcus checked the display, and his stomach sank. 3 contacts approaching fast. The Kresh had returned, and they had brought friends. Lysara, wake up," Marcus said urgently. "We have company." Lysara came alert immediately. She studied the sensor readings, and her face went pale. 6 ships this time. They have called in reinforcements. Marcus moved to the entrance and looked out. He could see the ships descending in formation. They were taking this seriously now. The Kresh were not going to be driven off by tricks and traps this time. They were coming in force to finish what they started. "How long until your rescue arrives?" Marcus asked. "At least 12 more hours," Lysara said quietly. "We cannot hold that long. Not against this many." Marcus checked his remaining supplies. The plasma cutter was dead. His pistol was empty. He had improvised weapons and a few remaining traps, but nothing that would stop a full assault by experienced warriors. The odds were impossible. "You should surrender to them," Lysara said suddenly. "Tell them you will not interfere. Perhaps they will let you live." Marcus looked at her like she had suggested he'd jump off the mountain. "Not happening. We both survive this, or neither of us does." "Marcus, be reasonable. You cannot fight 12 Kresh warriors alone. This is not bravery. This is suicide," maybe Marcus admitted. "But I am not good at walking away from people who need help. Bad habit of mine." The Kresh ships landed in a semicircle around the crashed vessel. Warriors emerged, weapons ready, and armor gleaming in the morning sun. Marcus counted 14 of them. They moved with military precision, forming a perimeter around every exit. Communication signal came through on the ship's emergency frequency. Grakish voice spoke in accented English. "Human, I admit you fought well yesterday. You have earned respect. But this ends now. We have overwhelming force. Surrender the Volari, and we will allow you to leave unharmed." "You have my word as a hunter." Marcus picked up the communication device. "Your word means nothing to me, Grakish. The Volari is not property. She is a person. You are not taking her, then you choose death." "So be it." The Kresh began their approach. Marcus had fortified the main entrance as best he could, but there were other ways into the damaged ship. He could not defend them all. He would have to move constantly, staying ahead of the attackers and buying as much time as possible. The first Kresh came through the main entrance. Marcus triggered a trap that brought down part of the ceiling. Rock and metal crashed down, blocking that route. But almost immediately he heard sounds from the other side of the ship. They were cutting through the hole in multiple places. Smart. They were not going to funnel into his prepared defenses this time. Marcus moved to intercept the first group that breached through the port side hole. He threw a makeshift explosive made from a power cell. It detonated with a flash and a bang. More noise than damage, but it made the Kresh hesitate. He fired a jury-rigged energy weapon that he had cobbled together from ship components. It sparked and nearly blew up in his hands. But it worked long enough to hit one warrior. But there were too many coming from too many directions. Marcus found himself being pushed back toward the control room again. The Kresh were coordinating their assault, communicating constantly and covering each other's movements. They had learned from yesterday's mistakes. Marcus fought with everything he had. He used his knowledge of the ship layout to his advantage, taking routes the heavily armored Kresh could not follow easily. He collapsed corridors behind him and used the ship's remaining power to create electrical barriers. But slowly, inevitably, he was being surrounded. He reached the control room out of breath and bleeding from a dozen small wounds. Lasara was there waiting with her weapon ready. She had been monitoring the battle on her sensors. "You cannot win this, Marcus. Please. Surrender while you still can." "Not my style," Marcus said. He was checking his last few resources. Almost nothing left. "Besides, I have a plan." "What plan?" "Still working on it. Give me a minute." The Kresh began gathering outside the control room. Marcus could hear them setting up heavy weapons to breach the reinforced door. Grakish voice came through the communication device again. "Last chance, human. Surrender, or we breach that door and kill you both." Marcus picked up the device. "Grakish, I have a question for you. How much experience do you have fighting humans?" There was a pause. "You are the first I have encountered personally. Why does this matter?" "Because you made a mistake. You assumed I fight like other species, that I would use the weapons and tactics you expect. But humans, we are survivors. We have been fighting for our existence since we climbed out of caves. We learned to beat things bigger and stronger than us by using our brains. Your point." "My point is, you never asked yourself why I kept falling back to this control room. You never wondered why I did not try to escape. You just assumed I was losing." Marcus nodded to Lasara. She activated a program she had been preparing for the last hour. Every remaining power cell in the ship began overloading simultaneously. The energy output spiked dramatically. "What are you doing?" Grakish demanded. "Creating a very big distraction," Marcus said. "You wanted to breach this door? Go ahead. But when you do all that, stored energy is going to discharge at once. This entire section of the ship will become one giant electrical trap. Anyone inside will be fried, including you and your warriors." It was a bluff. The power discharge would be dangerous, but not necessarily lethal to armored Kresh, but they did not know that. Marcus was counting on them being cautious. Grakish hesitated. "You are bluffing. You would kill yourself and the Volari. Maybe. But I think I would survive in this shielded control room. And Lysera is what you want, right? If she dies, you get nothing. You lose your salvage and you lose warriors. Bad business decision, Greykish? Wow. Marcus could almost hear Greykish thinking it through. The creche leader was many things, but he was not stupid. This operation had already cost him too much. Was one Valari captive worth risking his entire crew? You cannot stay in there forever, human, Greykish finally said. True. But Valari rescue ships are coming. I just need to last long enough. And I think I can. The question is, can you afford to wait? Your damaged ships need repairs. Your injured warriors need medical attention. How long before your crew decides this salvage is not worth it? Marcus was guessing, but he was guessing based on what he knew about raiders and pirates. They were motivated by profit, not honor. Make the cost high enough, and they would walk away. More silence. Marcus waited, watching Lysera's sensors. The creche communicating among themselves. He could see the warriors outside the control room spreading out, taking defensive positions. They were not preparing to breach. They were preparing to wait. That was actually worse. If the creche decided to siege the control room, Marcus and Lysera had no food and limited water. They would not last days, let alone 12 hours. But Marcus noticed something on the sensors. The creche positions had gaps. They were spreading their force too thin, trying to cover all possible exit points. There was a pattern to their deployment. They expected Marcus to either surrender or try to break out through the most obvious routes. Marcus began formulating an actual plan. It was risky and would require perfect timing, but it might work. He explained it to Lysera in whispers. Her eyes widened. That is insane, she said.
I know.
But insane is kind of a human specialty. They spent the next hour preparing. Marcus used the ship's remaining resources to create what looked like a defensive setup, but was actually something else entirely. Lysera reconfigured her console to give them remote access to ship functions from outside the control room. When everything was ready, Marcus took a deep breath. His ribs hurt and he was exhausted, but he felt oddly calm. He had done everything he could. Now it was time to see if his crazy plan would work. Ready? He asked. Lysera. She nodded, though she looked terrified. As ready as I will ever be? Marcus activated his trap, and the real fight was about to begin. Part 5. A new understanding Marcus triggered the sequence. Immediately, every alarm in the ship began blaring. Smoke poured from vents throughout the vessel. The lights flickered wildly. To the creche warriors outside, it looked like the ship was suffering a catastrophic systems failure. The power cells are overloading, Lysera announced over the ship's communication system, making her voice sound panicked. We are losing containment. The creche warriors reacted instinctively. They pulled back from the ship, putting distance between themselves and what appeared to be an imminent explosion. Even Greykish voice carried concern. Fall back to safe distance. Let the ship destroy itself if they are foolish enough. That was exactly what Marcus had counted on. As the creche retreated, he and Lysera slipped out through a small maintenance hatch on the underside of the ship that the creche had not found. It was barely large enough for them to squeeze through and opened into a crevice between the ship and the rocky mountainside. They crawled through the narrow space, moving as quietly as possible. Marcus's teeth were clenched against the pain in his ribs. Every movement hurt, but he kept going. Behind them, the ship continued its falls, its emergency with alarms and smoke creating the perfect distraction. They emerged from the crevice about 50 meters from the ship behind a line of boulders. Marcus checked the creche positions. The warriors were focused on the ship, waiting for it to explode. Their backs were to the forest. Now we run, Marcus whispered. They moved quickly and quietly into the tree line. The forest was dense here, providing cover. Marcus led them uphill away from the creche ships. His plan was simple, but desperate. Put distance between them and the hunters, then hide until Valari rescue arrived. It was not much of a plan, but it was all they had. They had gone maybe 200 meters when the ship alarm suddenly shut off. Marcus could hear angry shouting in the distance. The creche had realized it was a trick. Within moments, he heard sounds of pursuit. The hunters were coming, and they were moving fast. Marcus and Lysera ran. The terrain was rough and steep. Lysara was not built for running, and Marcus was injured. The Kresh warriors were designed for hunting, and they were gaining ground quickly. Marcus could hear them crashing through the underbrush behind them, getting closer with every second. They reached a steep cliff face. There was no way up, and no time to find another route. Marcus turned to face their pursuers' weapons, ready for a last stand. Lysara stood beside him, her energy weapon raised, though her hands trembled. 4 Kresh warriors emerged from the trees. Greykish was with them. The hunt leader looked furious. Clever trick, human. But it ends here. You have nowhere left to run. Marcus stepped in front of Lysara, placing himself between her and the Kresh. Then you will have to go through me. It can be arranged, Greykish said, raising his weapon. Then the sky lit up with brilliant blue light. A ship descended through the clouds, moving with incredible speed. It was larger than the Kresh vessels, and its design was elegant and flowing. Valari rescue had arrived early. The ship hovered above them, and a powerful voice boomed out in multiple languages. Attention, Kresh hunters. You are in violation of Valari territory and salvage rights. Cease hostile actions immediately or face consequences. Greykish and his warriors looked up at the ship, then at each other. The Valari vessel had weapons ports opening along its hull. The message was clear. The odds had just shifted dramatically. This is not your territory, Greykish protested. This world is unclaimed. The pilot of the crashed vessel is Valari. That makes this a Valari matter. You have 10 seconds to return to your ships and depart. Greykish looked at Marcus and Lysara. For a moment, Marcus thought the hunter might try something anyway. Then Greykish lowered his weapon. This is not overhuman. We will remember you. I am counting on it, Marcus replied. The Kresh warriors retreated through the forest. Moments later, their ships lifted off and accelerated away into the sky. The Valari rescue ship landed in a clearing nearby. A ramp extended, and several Valari in formal uniforms emerged. They moved quickly to Lysara, checking her condition. One of them, a tall male with elaborate markings, spoke to Lysara in their language. She responded, pointing to Marcus several times. The male listened, then approached Marcus. He spoke in perfect English. I am Commander Thalon of the Valari Diplomatic Corps. You are the human who protected our... Scout, I am Marcus Chen. I just did what needed doing. Thalon studied him carefully. Lysara tells me you fought multiple Kresh warriors to defend her, that you risked your life repeatedly for someone you had just met. She also tells me there was an unfortunate incident when you first found her. Marcus nodded. I did not know your customs. I entered her ship to help, and I saw her before she was properly prepared. I deeply regret causing her any shame. Interesting, Thalon said. You understand our concept of shame? Lysara explained it. I do not fully understand your culture, but I understand I made a mistake. Thalon glanced back at Lysara, who was being treated by medical personnel. Our culture places great importance on proper first contact rituals. What happened was a significant violation. Under normal circumstances, this would create a diplomatic incident. Marcus felt his heart sink. I understand. I am sorry, however, Thalon continued. There are mitigating circumstances. Your actions were motivated by the desire to save a life. You had no knowledge of our customs. And most importantly, your subsequent behavior demonstrated remarkable honor and courage. Lysara has spoken passionately in your defense. She says you embody qualities that the Valari have perhaps lost in our long peace. I do not know about that, Marcus said. I just could not let them take her. Yes, that is precisely what makes your actions remarkable. Thalon made a gesture that seemed formal. On behalf of the Valari people, I thank you, Marcus Chen. You saved the life of one of our scouts, and in doing so, you have shown us something valuable about your species. Medical personnel approached Marcus. You are injured. Please allow us to treat you. Marcus let them work on his ribs. The Valari medical technology was far beyond human capabilities. Within minutes, the pain was completely gone, and the injuries were healed. He could breathe freely again. Lysara approached once the medical team cleared her. She looked much better now, cleaned up and wearing fresh robes. She performed a formal bow to Marcus. Marcus Chen, I formally introduce myself to you now under proper circumstances. I am Lysara, daughter of Thelon, scout of the Valari Exploratory Service. You have honored me with your protection and courage. By the traditions of my people, you are now considered a friend of the Valari. Marcus returned the bow awkwardly, not quite sure of the proper form. I am honored, Lysara, she smiled. You saved my life multiple times. You fought for me when you had no reason to. You could have left me to my fate, but instead you risked everything. That is a debt I can never fully repay. You already repaid it. You fought beside me when you could have stayed hidden. You saved me as much as I saved you. Thalon stepped forward. This incident has created an unusual situation. First contact between Valari and humans was supposed to happen through official channels with proper protocols. Instead, it happened because of a crash and a rescue. But perhaps this is better. You have shown us who humans really are. Not through formal negotiations, but through your actions under pressure. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now we begin proper first contact. The Valari Council will want to meet you. You have inadvertently become humanity ambassador, whether you intended to or not. Your species has made quite an impression. Marcus felt overwhelmed. I am just an engineer. I am not qualified to represent all of humanity. On the contrary, Thalon said. You are exactly what humanity should be represented by. Someone who acts with honor and courage when tested. The Valari respects strength, but we respect moral courage even more. You have shown us that humans possess something we had not expected. A willingness to sacrifice for others regardless of species or circumstance, Sarah added. You told me yesterday that humans do what feels right even when it is hard. I believe that now. And I believe my people need to understand this about your species. Over the next few hours, Marcus was brought aboard the Valari ship. They treated him with great respect, providing food and quarters. Lysara stayed with him, explaining what would happen next. The Valari would make formal contact with human governments. They would share technology and knowledge. Trade and cultural exchange would begin. All because you heard my distress beacon, Lysara said as they looked out at the stars from the ship's observation deck. Seems strange that so much could change because of one crashed ship. Marcus agreed. It's not strange, inevitable. Your species was going to reach the stars eventually. We would have met one way or another. This way is better. We met as individuals before our governments got involved. We learned about each other through shared danger and mutual respect. That is a stronger foundation than formal treaties. Marcus thought about everything that had happened. The awkward first meeting, the fight against the creche, the desperate last stand. It had all felt chaotic and unplanned. But maybe Lysara was right. Maybe this messy, complicated first contact was exactly what both their species needed. What about your culture? Marcus asked. The shame you felt, the violation of your customs. Does this all just get forgotten? Lysara was quiet for a moment. Not forgotten, but balanced. You violated one custom, but upheld something more important. You showed that sometimes the spirit of a rule matters more than the letter. My people have become so focused on ceremony and tradition that we forget why those traditions exist. They exist to maintain honor and respect. But you showed honor and respect through your actions, not through following rules you did not know. So what you were saying is, I got lucky. She laughed. Perhaps you showed my people something we needed to see. That good intentions and brave actions can matter as much as proper protocol. The ship began accelerating toward Valari space. Marcus watched Earth shrinking behind them. He had left that morning planning to do simple maintenance work at his research outpost. Now, he was leaving the planet as humanity's first official contact with an alien species. Life was strange sometimes. Lysara stood beside him. Are you nervous? Terrified, Marcus admitted. I have no idea what I am doing. That makes two of us. But we will figure it out together. That seems to be what we do well. Marcus smiled. Yeah, we make a pretty good team. The human and the Valari scout who met under the worst possible circumstances, and somehow started a friendship between species. It sounds like something from a story, a very strange story. The best ones usually are. They stood together watching the stars. Two beings from different worlds who had found common ground through courage, trust, and a willingness to do the right thing even when it was hard. Behind them, their homeworlds were preparing for a new era of cooperation. Ahead of them lay challenges neither could fully imagine. But for now, in this moment, they were simply two friends who had survived an impossible situation together. And that was enough. The Valari ship jumped too faster than light travel, carrying Marcus toward a future he never could have imagined. He did not know what would happen next. He did not know how Earth would react or what his role would be in the coming changes. But he knew one thing with certainty: he had done the right thing. And sometimes that was all that mattered. Far below on Earth, the research outpost continued its routine work. In a few days, someone would notice Marcus was missing and start asking questions. Those questions would lead to discoveries that would change humanity forever. But all of that was yet to come. For now, Marcus Chen, the engineer who had accidentally become a hero, stood on an alien ship beside an alien friend and prepared to face whatever adventures awaited them among the stars. It was the beginning of something extraordinary, and it had all started with one simple decision: to help someone in need regardless of the cost. That was the human way, and the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant.